I am Kate Bennett, and I lead the education work here at United Way. So thank you. Hopefully all of you are here for the breakout panel for education as part of the Equity Summit. And maybe we have some Zoom bombers that are in here with all the trouble that we've had with the links. But I'm just going to go ahead and kick it off. Well, why don't, Kate, you want to briefly introduce yourself in case you have to pop in? We'll know who you are. She's going to be helping us with logistics and all that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Kate. I'm a project manager at United Way. Excited to be listening in today and hoping to provide some tech support to keep things smooth, but we'll see. Give a holler. We also have somebody watching the chat box. So
yes,
thank
so
you,
two
Kate.
Kates from United Way, and hopefully Cheryl's on here somewhere, who a lot of you know. And Cheryl will also help us monitor the chat and make sure that I don't do something crazy or get too far off track. So thank you all. Let's just start with brief introductions, and let's start with Peter because I can see him on my screen. You want to just talk a little bit about who you are, the role you have, and maybe if you've been listening in, some thoughts you've had from the day.
All right, hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Peter LeBlanc. I am a principal within Des Moines Public Schools. I was an elementary principal for a few years over at King Elementary. Then I was a principal at Goodrow Middle School, and now I am a principal on special assignment in our Office of Talent Support, working on our equity and anti-racism work within the district. I was in other meetings this morning, so this is the first time I'm getting to jump on today, and so I am glad to be here.
Thank you. How about you, Gabby? Do you want to introduce yourself and talk about your role?
Hi, everybody. My name is Gaby Guerra. My pronouns are she, her, and ella, and I'm the assistant director for Alexito. And at Alexito, what we do is we provide programming that builds the leadership potential of Latino youth across the state of Iowa. And we do that through college preparation, career development, civic engagement, family support, and the celebration of culture. Through the pandemic, we've expanded our services. So some of the things that we've been doing since March have really changed. We've been really focusing on making sure that the Latinx families across the state have their basic needs met, like food and financial stability. So we really changed the focus during this time to make sure that they're doing okay and that we're taking care of our families.
How about Boaz? And am I addressing you right? I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you yet. So.
Oh, yes, you are pronouncing it right. You did better. Thank you. I am Boaz Nikingi. I am a former refugee from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I am the executive director for iCoach, which stands for Iowa Congolese Organization and Center for Healing. And we primarily assist refugees and immigrants with basic needs, transitioning from their refugee experiences to become US citizens. We do a lot of services with refugees and immigrants. We help them with employment. We help them with transportation. We've had a lot of challenges with transportation in the refugee and immigrant populations. Like Anne said, we also assisted a lot of people during these pandemic challenges that we are all facing with food insecurity, running, some going to the grocery stores to get groceries for older people who are still staying home. And we've been very, very busy helping families with virtual learning assistance. We have a lot of kids, about 200 kids who are taking classes online that we've been helping since September 8th, and we're still doing that. And we just found out that the schools are going to close again. So that's gonna be it's gonna be a challenge. We'll be looking for even more kids coming to our programs.
And thank you. And last but not least, John Douglas.
Hello, Boaz. Totally feel you on that switch back to virtual. Hello, y'all. My name is John Douglas. I am the executive director over at the Wilkie House. We're a historically Black nonprofit youth development center. We service families with youth K through 8th grade, primarily in after school, which is now full day, summer programming, tutoring assistance, as well as mentoring. So the Wilkie House, our really big approach is just to be able to help as many families as we can through this difficulty, not only that they are facing within virtual learning, but as well as COVID. Oh, and I guess you had mentioned what we do. Since most of us here work either in nonprofits or directly in education, as executive director, many of you guys know in small organizations, we get to run HR and finances, as well as management and fundraising, as well as marketing and all that other fun stuff. I see some heads nodding. So that's kind of where we are at.
Great. Well, thank you all. And I'm gonna be, I'm kind of a free for all kind of person, much to Kate and Cheryl's dismay. So I'm gonna talk about the first question, and I'm gonna let you guys, just whoever wants to take it, take it. And it can be about COVID, obviously that's dominant, but if you have other thoughts, you know, that would be great too, if we can think post-COVID and maybe during COVID. But how does education look in 2020 for kids of color? What's the same, what's different? And like I said, obviously COVID is dominant, but definitely we can talk about COVID, but besides COVID also. So whoever feels like they have a compelling answer. Or I'll have to call on you.
I guess I can go first, and this is pre-COVID as well as moving forward into post-COVID. But one of the most depressing things I noticed after moving back to Iowa, I was gone for about 15 years, working and living internationally. And one of the biggest things that I like to brag about within Iowa was that we were #1 or in the top 5 within education. We have not been that, I guess, in the past several decades. But that was something that I was really proud of, something that I was able to explain to individuals in whatever country I was working in at the time, and something that I know we could feel proud of in general. When you're speaking with people internationally, there's not too much you can say about Iowa that they're going to know about. So with that, one of the biggest difficulties that I see comes down to the funding. As if I recall correctly, Iowa has moved down to number 25 as far as ranking and funding per pupils. Our funds just haven't kept up with inflation and the funding that comes in. So really, I think that would be the #1 pre as well as current and post-COVID would be the funding that our schools need in order to support the youth specifically.
Thank you, John. I'll add some things to that as well. Working with Latino families, we've really seen the impact because of COVID, but some of these things are just gotten worse because of the pandemic. So poverty, for example, exclusion, and other gaps that we see in Latino families, they had already experienced them. They are getting worse because of the pandemic. So we have about 42% of Iowa Latino youth who live in poverty compared to 13% of non-Latinos. This does not help when it comes to switching to a virtual format. There is a digital divide that we all know about. We have to think about the reliability of our Wi-Fi, of the tech that the youth are using. Do they know how to use those kinds of tools? Do they have that support? So we really have to make sure that we're staying in touch with our families and that they have those resources that they need to use them. During the pandemic, we saw a lot of our families losing hours, losing wages, losing jobs altogether. And many were left without support because they weren't able to apply for unemployment. So a lot of them didn't have anywhere to turn. And so it was really beautiful to see a lot of the community organizations that came together to mobilize solutions for our families. But we still need to make sure that we're doing that work. But I say all this because it impacts how a student does in school, right? If they're stressed out about the situation that their family has at home, if they're thinking about, do they have something to eat that night? Do they know how to use their computer, or do they can't connect to internet? All that affects how they're doing in school. And one of the things too that I've seen is once we're in virtual, which obviously we want to make sure that our kids are staying healthy and that we're keeping them away from the pandemic. So it's kind of a difficult situation to navigate. But a lot of those youth don't have a parent at home to help them with schoolwork because they're working 2 or 3 jobs. So they have to navigate those that coursework on their own. They might be taking care of siblings or have additional responsibilities that they have to think about as well. One other thing that I wanted to add, Alexito has really thought about all of these issues that our youth are facing during this time and before this time. So we actually created a program called Compa en Camino, which is Partner on Call. And it's funded by Mid-Iowa Health and United Way. And we created this program to really provide that assistance to our kids. So if they need help with homework, how to connect to the Wi-Fi, or if the computer's not connecting, because that happens a lot, we have somebody on call to go and help them do that. If they need help with connecting with a teacher or finding some kind of resource, anything that is an obstruction to their success in school, their partner or their compa is there to help them with that. The one thing that we are running into is making sure that our families know that this program exists, so that they're reaching out and that they're calling us, because if they don't call us, then we can't give them that help, right? So we need help spreading that information about this program so that they can be successful in school.
Thank you. Peter, do you have a different answer or something to add?
Yeah, I'll jump in. One of the things that we took advantage of in Des Moines is we created some space and opportunity over the summer to hear the voice of our students and our families through our anti-racist town halls. And so the thought of what is that experience like for children of color in our schools, they shared that with us. And it was a harsh reality that we had to face as a district, to hear the kids tell us, we don't see ourselves in the curriculum and what we're being taught. We don't have a voice in what we're learning about and what we want to learn about. We don't have a say in any of that. We want teachers who look like us and who have similar experiences to us. We want to have conversations about social justice and social emotional learning, but we don't have those opportunities in our schools, or our teachers aren't as comfortable teaching those things as they are with teaching your traditional content. And so just knowing that and thinking about that, that's how our students are walking into our schools and feeling every single day as they enter in. That's a jarring shock to the system for us. And so we've made efforts and taking efforts to make some changes based off of those findings and based off of the feedback that the kids have given us, because we have to remember that the education, they are at the center of what we do. We are there to serve the students and provide them with opportunities to learn and grow, because eventually they are going to be the folks who are going to be running and taking care of all of us who are on this call today. And we want to teach them how to problem solve and teach them how to dialogue and collaborate with those that are like you and that think like you, but also to have those dialogues and those conversations with those that are different than you. And so when I think about that question you asked, it's a work in progress. It is a true work in progress where we have to make systemic improvements, because there are systems and institutions within education that operate from what I call a deficit mindset, versus thinking about the strengths of what this diverse group of individuals who we have coming into our schools, and leveraging those strengths in order to support them better in our schools each day.
Can I echo what John said? I work with a lot of refugee youth and families. So the need is great. I mean, I will be honest with you and tell you that education is not looking good for refugees and immigrant kids, or people of color in 2020. And the reason why I say that, it's because of the numbers that we've been getting from schools, that pretty much all of our kids are 2 or 3 grades behind in reading or math. That's a heartbreaking, and we still don't know how that happened. But I can tell you that we know and we understand that a lot of families are struggling with languages, which we found out that a lot of schools are struggling to communicate with parents. And that has been a very, very challenge to a lot of the kids and the families. My friend Gabby talked about how these kids don't have in-house support. Like when these kids are back from school, then nobody's home to help them. And if mom or dad is home, they don't have the academic language to help these kids. They can't read to them. They can't solve the problem to them because it's in English, and it's just not good. And so what my friend John talked earlier, then the question comes to funding. Like how can we do a better job as a community to work together to solve some of these problems? I've been a very big advocate when it comes to ethnic-based organizations, because those are key points. Those are places where a lot of the service providers should be thinking about that. If we want to reach out to these families, if we want to do a better job with these families, we got to work with the small organizations, the people who are who know the families, and spend a lot of time with families on a daily basis, not just for school related work, but on other stuff, grocery shopping. We still have a lot of people who are struggling with that. That's one way we connect with families, transportation and all of that. So to me, I will just be very honest and say that I that's just my personal opinion. Please don't take it personal, but I think the work is still, the work ahead. It's still in in jeopardy, and I don't see our kids doing well this year. And part of the reason is what John said. We have a lot of people who are doing great stuff, helping families and youth, but not being funded, and we still don't know why.
So I have a question about how you all see us best to move forward, but I have a question that came up. You all have such different populations that you're serving, and I wonder, with movements like Black Lives Matter and things focused on social justice, does it resonate with the Hispanic kids, or does it not? Or with your Congolese kids, is it something that we could do a better job of? And maybe Peter would have a sense of this from the district perspective. I mean, obviously awareness is high and people are trying to be more conscious and more caring, but do we run the risk of isolating some kids by focusing more on one group?
So, and I'm actually really
that
happy.
was off script, so hopefully Cheryl's not going to kill me.
I was really glad that Peter had mentioned some of the research that they did when they were collecting the data from the youth in the community. I do not think that focusing on one population versus another is necessarily going to disenfranchise any youth, specifically because we utilize a Eurocentric curriculum now. So that's essentially what we're doing to any student that did not primarily come from Eastern or Western Europe. And that's what we've always done. So I think bringing in a little diversity, that's where at the Wilkie House, we're very excited and very happy that we utilize an Afrocentric curriculum. That was our biggest thing that we heard from kids. We don't have any teachers that really look like us. All we learn about, Mr. John, is slavery. I am tired of writing about slavery. This is all that we get to do. And that's why I tell my kiddos, I don't know what no Black History Month is. I know Black history, but you can't fit that in a month. So that's where we utilize the Afrocentric curriculum to make sure that we are teaching the things that oftentimes schools are just restricted in their ability to do so due to the restrictions that the federal and state government put on them in the curriculums that they can teach. So I make sure that our youth know this is not anyone to blame specifically, but we can adjust this. We spent an entire week this summer on Black female inventors. Most of the people I know couldn't name one, but our kids were super excited when they were like, are you for real? Like, African Americans did all of this, they invented all of that, but none of us were aware of it. So really being able to bring that up. Latinx history, I would say the same exact thing. There is so much history that we never really get to learn, that really does disenfranchise youth of color because all they ever learn about is Greek and Roman mythology. And through that Eurocentric view and lens that they learn. So I think bringing it in, the Wilkie House, we're inclusive of everyone, but my families, Latinos, Caucasians, and Asians that come in know that our central focus is that Afrocentric curriculum. And I have yet to hear a complaint from any of our students or families with what we teach. They find it to be a positive that their kids are learning something that otherwise they would not be informed of.
And I would have to echo John's point as well. With Alexito, we really focus on making sure that our youth are empowered, knowing about Latinx history, and also understanding that Latinos are not a monolith, that we have so much diversity within the Latino community that is important to learn about while you are young. So we really try to make sure that all of our facilitators are well trained and understand that, so the youth have that experience and feel empowered when they go into school. And so the next time that they have to do a history project, they can pick somebody that might not be in the book, because it's almost, there never is somebody in the book that's Latino that they know, right? Sometimes we will hear about Cesar Chavez, but that's about it. So I would definitely echo John's point and Peter's point that we definitely need to make sure that we are changing these things, that we have more teachers and administrators that look like our students, that have somebody that they can relate to. I think that that's what's going to start making a difference too.
Yeah, in my experience, it has been kids get excited about learning something new. Even as a young Black boy, if I was learning about Latinx history, there was a level of excitement and newness to that that is intriguing, and you want to learn more. The issue we have sometimes is adults' response and reaction to the newness of what we want to teach. And so that's where the education and the learning and the unlearning, where it has to happen, because kids are coming in, and honestly, they're gonna learn whatever it is that we put in front of them. And it just brings a level of excitement when you can say, that person looks like me. Oh, all I've heard about in the past, okay, about Black history is you had slavery, you had Martin Luther King, and it all stopped. And there's no more racism in the world. It's done. And that's not the reality of what they're going. And if they're watching TV every day, if they're on social media every day, that they see that that's not true. That's not real. And so kids want to know teach us what's really going on. Who invented these things? Why are these things happening in my community? And so I think that's where we have a lot of opportunity with starting to bring kids to the table when we start having these conversations about what's being taught. So in Des Moines, that's one of the things that we're starting to do. We're having kids that are part of these curriculum conversations now, who are working with our curriculum teams in the district to have those conversations, to do curriculum audits. We have a high school that now there are students that are part of their school leadership team. So that that voice and that constant reminder of, we are at the center of this work, and we want to know what we're learning about, and we want to inform you about what we want to learn about. And show us, teach us, have us research those things so that we can have that knowledge and go out and do better and be better.
Boaz, did you have anything to add to that, or should I ask my last question?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, they
Okay.
said pretty good stuff. I'm happy.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll ask you first if you're okay with it. How do you think is the best way to move forward? I think we've kind of touched on it through parts of the last question, but what would you see besides, you kind of talked about the basic needs, and we all know COVID is different, but and basic needs are always going to be important, but beyond that, more to like what Peter's talking about, what would kids want to learn in school? And you mentioned the meme behind, how do you propose that we fix that for kids? What are your thoughts on that?
So there are different ways that I think we can move forward. I mean, I'm not an educator, so I don't know how curriculum are developed. I hope to know that, but I think we've also heard from a lot of the kids that we work with that sometimes they get pulled aside, that what they think that what other kids are learning, it's not what they're learning. So I still don't know if that's true or not. Myself, I've had kids approaching me, asking me why that happens in classroom, that there's a book that someone else reads, and there's a book that I shouldn't be reading or something like that. And I get it because of maybe the language barriers, but for most of the part, we still have kids who have the feelings that some kids are being taught good lessons, and other kids are not being taught good lessons. So I will ask that moving forward, maybe if in this group there are people who work with curriculum developers, people who develop curriculums, to really sit down with them and just make all lessons available to every child in the classroom, if that's the case. But also talking about kids, let's get families involved in everything that's happening when it comes to education. And when I say that, I mean, I'm gonna give examples from the refugees and immigrant populations, because that's where our primarily focus is. We still help other people, but so families are left behind when in terms of their kids' education. And what we found out is that communication is part of the problem. There are ways that schools are communicating with families which are not working for a lot of families. I'll use an example of emails. Myself coming to America, I never used email before. My first time to use email was when I got here. We still have people, we still have parents who are who don't know how to use emails. And if communication is happening only via email, then parents don't know what's going on behind the scenes. They see their kids go to school in the morning and come back home in the afternoon. It's done deal. They don't know how to check their grades. They don't know how to check their attendance. They don't know how to send an email saying that my son or my daughter is going to be late to school, or we're going to have to pick him up early, something like that. So I will suggest that communication also get, let's meet families where they are, work with them, with what they have. If they don't use emails, let's call them. If they don't use phones, let's knock on their doors. If they, somehow we gotta be able to reach out to these families, because if we don't do it, then it's gonna create even more challenges. And my last thing, it's what we talked about. Obviously we found out that the schools are doing great job, but there still need we still need to help these kids when they come home from school. Like I said, because they are very, very behind. You're talking about 2 or 3 grades behind academically. And to do that, we need funding. So moving forward, we will suggest or ask that these programs get funded so that we can all help one another to get these kids back on track.
Thank you. What about you, Gabby? What do you think the best ways to move forward are for the kids that you guys serve?
I definitely agree with everything that Boaz just shared. I definitely think communication is key. We have to meet families where they are. We experience a similar thing with emails. So most of the time we have to call our families because that's the best way to get information out to them. The other thing that I'm really thinking about is making sure that we are working together with other organizations, businesses or nonprofits in the area. We can't be siloed in our work, especially when we're working with our families. A lot of us work with different populations, but we might be providing some of the same things. So we have to figure out where the gaps are, who's doing what, and see how we can work together to fill those gaps. So that's the main thing that I'm thinking about. I think a lot of the time what ends up happening is we might have competing programs that end up not working together, and that doesn't serve the youth. We have to make sure that we're working together so we can give them what they need. So I would say collaboration and connection with other organizations is going to be key, and then that communication with our families. And I did want to share something because I know COVID is on top of mind all the time and will be for a long time. And I think that we're entering a new reality for the rest of our lives, right? So this is very, very weird time for all of us, but it's a new reality. So when I think about our youth trying to get used to virtual learning, we have to, it's trial and error right now, but we have to figure out what's going to work. I know that when we started our mentorship program at the beginning of the school year this year, I had a student who for a month wasn't able to turn in homework because she didn't know how to work Canvas. And I don't know if she had reached out to somebody or not, but a month had passed and she didn't know how to do that. And so once we got her mentor to help her out, she was able to do that work. So some of our kids are getting left behind. So we really, really have to focus on that communication piece, so families are getting the information that they need.
Maybe I'll put that question over to Peter. How does a big school district system that has, what do we say, like 100 and some languages spoken, how do you make sure that every family gets communicated with in the exact right way? Or what are some strategies that the district can adopt to address what some of the folks are talking about?
Some of the
on the spot.
Yeah, no, some of the some of the things we have in place currently is we have our bilingual family liaisons who speak the multiple languages and who many of them often come from the community as a resource. Now you're talking about one, maybe two people for the entire district. So that in itself is problematic in some ways, but it's a beginning point. As far as electronic communication is concerned, we are making efforts to, when we do have those electronic communications, to attempt to make sure that those are translated in multiple languages. But the thing about that is not everybody can read in their home language as well. And we have to be conscious of that too. And so how do we communicate? How do we know? And two, how do we communicate when we do know with those families? Because that is a reality too. And so it's really complex. But one of the things that we're working on is how do we start to dismantle those systems of bias and inequities that are holding people back. So as was described here, we have families who we are sending all of these communications out electronically because of efficiency and it's easy, but they're not. But the feedback I'm hearing right now, and the feedback we've heard before, is that it's not serving everybody. And if we talk about being a just organization, a just education organization, that is, our work is around equity, we have to figure out those ways of filling those gaps. And that's where we have to lean on and rely on our community partners and those partnerships to figure out how can we fill those gaps. What is it that we can collaborate around and problem solve around in service of our students and families? And so those are things that are out there that we are attempting to do. And one thing that COVID did was it just accelerated a lot of these efforts, because the communication has to come quick, because with COVID, things are changing on a daily basis. And it seems like every other day there's something new going on, or we're communicating that there's a quarantine, or there's this and there's that. And so there's a sense of urgency that we have in this work. And just on the academic side, and we've got to do better at creating that sense of belonging, giving our kids that opportunity to create that sense of belonging, making sure that every individual who works with us has that sense of belonging, because that sense of belonging and dignity is extremely important. means that you're honoring who I am as a human being and as a person, and you want me to be successful, and you are allowing me the space to be my authentic self in my learning. And so those are all things that we know we have to work towards and that we are working towards, but it is a collaboration between the schools, the community organizations, and the families to figure out how do we fill those gaps where we have gaps in communication, where we have gaps in education, so that we can support those who most need it.
Great, thank you. I know we have a couple questions in the chat and we're running out of time. So Cheryl or Kate, do you want to tell me a specific one or ask it?
Let's go ahead with this one. It was, how can we get encourage students of color to interested in earning a degree in teaching?
And I'll actually take that one. So I know we had discussed how do we get youth voice? How do we get youth interested? And I think really the number one thing that we've been talking about is self-empowerment and youth voice. So teaching them about the reality of it. Elections, perfect example. The divisiveness with which it was. How about we just teach youth about what democracy is instead of all the BS that they are fed via the news, via YouTube, via all their social media. Let's stick with what is democracy? How do we vote for it? How do we move forward? What is teaching? It's not just the teacher that you see in front of you. There's much more within it. So making sure that we have the kids exposed beyond just the classroom to teachers. Having teachers come in, have them talk to the kids about the fun stuff that they get to do. Talk to them about the importance of, we need teachers that look like you. And the only way we're going to get those teachers is if you decide this is something you want to do. Do you enjoy supporting your fellow students? Do you enjoy working with families? This is something that you can directly do. Having them go to teaching colleges for field trips. Yes, a lot of our kids, not a lot, most of our kids want to go check out the football stadium at Iowa State or UNI, but we can also go to the teaching college. They can speak with the deans. College kids are cool. Mr. John ain't cool no more, and I'm okay with that, but college kids are cool. They want to meet them. How about we bring those education students from even Drake to come talk to our kids, make sure they know that this is what we need in the future. And even more than that, this is legitimate. This is pretty tight. Being a teacher is cool. And you can follow in that footstep in order to empower them to really do so and better understand that this is not a far away goal. This is something that you can begin to prepare for now, as long as we educate the kids in a manner in which they think is interesting. And that's where I say many of the kids hear our voices all the time. Let's bring in new blood. Let's bring in people who are just at the beginning of it, who are passionate, who are excited to come talk to our kids and engage them to be more interested in teaching so that we have that representative population.